Tappei has just released Arc 8 Chapter 21, and this video will be a summary of the chapter. Highly recommend you check out my Arc 8 Chapter 20 summary. Anyways, let's begin. The bar reeks of alcohol and death. The entrance of the bar is littered with shattered fragments of undead and empty liquor bottles. Both of these were piled up by the two middle-aged men. Rowan states that he thinks he knows the hairball. However, Groovy swears at him, stating to not call him a hairball. Groovy says that he ran and ran without eating or drinking, and that he's very tired. Rowan starts laughing, however Heinkel just sits there silently. Groovy then asks Heinkel if he is the same as Rowan. Editor's note: Groovy calls both of them red hair and blue head, respectively, so I'm just calling them by their names. Heinkel ignores him, and Groovy then says to not ignore him. However, Heinkel tells him to shut up and points his sword at Groovy's neck. Groovy ducks under the sword and punches Heinkel in his side, launching him into the wall and knocking him out. Groovy then catches the alcohol bottle that Heinkel was holding and he downs it in one gulp, stating that he wants food and water. Rowan, seeing this, goes on one knee and apologizes, stating that he and Heinkel are drifters and they ended up in this village. However, the village was full of those dirt bags, so Groovy says since there was no villagers, they had no choice but to drink all of the alcohol which was left over. Rowan says that he is ashamed to admit it, but yes, stating that they started to make bets on who would come through the front door, a man or woman. Groovy says that he doesn't like it, saying that Rowan can't fool him, since Rowan tried to kill him even now. Rowan did not deny it. Rowan had a very murderous intent currently around him. With that, Groovy says Rowan's smell is familiar, asking if Rowan is the father of Cecily's segment. Rowan says, oh, he's just been reminded of that and he forgot himself. Groovy says that Rowan is lying and that the reason Rowan tried to slash Groovy last chapter was because he didn't want the news to spread, since Cecily was supposed to have killed Rowan. Since Groovy was a 9 Divine General, he had brushed past Rowan many times, hence why he recognizes Rowan's scent. However, one time Rowan was disrespectful at the palace, and therefore Cecily was ordered to kill him. Groovy swears at his luck. Of the two people he finds, one is an alcoholic and one of them is a wanted criminal on the run. Rowan states Heinkel is alive after Groovy punched him, and Groovy says that Heinkel is stiff and him being alive wasn't intentional. Rowan says it's gotten noisy outside, meaning that they were surrounded. Groovy could ideally beat both Rowan and Heinkel and then beat the undead outside, however that wasn't practical. Groovy then says, here's the deal, and Rowan sits up. But this time the murderous aura Rowan had around him subsided. Groovy states that if Rowan helps him in this situation, he will use his authority as a 9 Divine General to remove Rowan's wanted label, allowing him to travel freely. Rowan is silent, and then an undead breaks in through the door, charging towards Groovy. However, before the zombie can reach Groovy, a sword slash rings out, and Rowan seemingly accepted the deal. With that, Groovy finally was overcome with exhaustion and he fell asleep. Rowan remarked that he picked a good time to fall asleep. Rowan looks down at Groovy. He knows that the deal is something to be considered. He could simply pierce Groovy's heart and continue to run forever. However, Rowan instead verbalizes that luck has finally shone on him and the third act of his life had begun. Rowan picks up Groovy and realizes that he now has to escape alive. He then kicks Heinkel and tells him to wake up and that they need to escape. Heinkel gets up and readies himself. Undead burst into the bar as Rowan readied his sword. He finally muttered that his son has a long way to the heavenly sword. The scene changed. Two lights will overturn the great calamity. This was the prophecy stated by Ublik. Subaru didn't really believe in predictions. Usually they were things used to fraud people. However, Subaru's return by death could be an example that can be seen as a prophecy. After all, it avoided the worst possible outcomes. Someone who cannot speak the language. Subaru thinks of who it is. However, Abel next to him states that Groovy is dead, and Subaru says that it's still unconfirmed. However, Abel says that since Groovy hasn't shown up, he is dead. Abel continues stating that they lost contact with Groovy and his army, meaning he has most likely been killed. And that's the most constructive approach to have. Subaru jokes saying, "What? Constructive? What are we constructing? A cemetery?" Abel then gives Subaru a dirty look. Subaru asks if Ublik can confirm whether or not Groovy is dead, and Ublik says he cannot. If Ublik's prophecy was correct, Groovy possessed a knowledge which could overturn the great disaster. The other person was Lewis, who came to Wallachia with Subaru and Rem and had overcome many situations. She was needed to fight off the calamity. Groovy was a spellcaster and specialized in sorcery and magic. Furthermore, as a divine general, he was also strong, which is what Subaru ponders. Abel confirms that he's strong, but states he most likely wasn't chosen based on his strength, but on his knowledge. It's strange. Beatrice and Roswell discovered the worms inside the undead. They have a greater magic power than Groovy, yet the light did not choose them. However, hearing this, both Abel and Subaru came to the same conclusion. It wasn't the magic component, it was the sorcery, curses, and witchcraft component. Abel says that the other person that they have knowledge with on curses and witchcraft is Obart, and Abel asks if Subaru has anyone that knows about that, and of course Subaru says Roswell and Beatrice. With that, Abel says that they need to gather all of the people with knowledge on witchcraft and curses and bundle them into a room so they can talk. Abel then asks Subaru if Lewis's presence will help them. Subaru is silent. He still doesn't know what to think of when it comes to Lewis. Abel, however, reminds Subaru that he will not execute Lewis based on her identity, and that Subaru is the person who defines Lewis, stating that if she had to choose between Subaru and Abel, her fate would be better with Subaru. Abel asks Ublik if Lewis is the other light, and Ublik says yes, although he doesn't know why she was chosen by the stars. Abel then tells Subaru to come to a conclusion. The scene changes and Subaru leaves the room. Emilia, who was outside, asks if he heard what he wanted to hear. We see that stargazers are a secret knowledge only known to a few people in Wallachia, so Emilia wasn't allowed to go to the room with Subaru and Abel to see the star reading done by Ublik. However, Abel allowed Subaru to come into the room because Subaru, of course, knew who Ublik was. Subaru was conflicted, but said to his group that they needed to have an important talk about something properly. Louis Arneb, the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony. And with that, the chapter ends. So again, this is the Louis Arneb redemption arc. I, of course, made a video talking how Louis would join the Emilia camp. I'm pretty sure I'm getting my wish here.